Alright, a lot of you will never have to drive in the snow. Suppose the first thing I'll do is show you the vicious blood blister I just gave myself trying to set up a stand in the van so I can drive in the snow and make this video. Alright, number one, I really don't give a shit. I'll drive in any condition because you really can't call yourself a driver if you're not willing to drive in any conditions. Rain, sleet, snow and ice, I don't really care. If I got someplace to go, I'm going. And isn't no amount of weather going to change my position on that. However, certain precautions must be taken. Number one, driving on the snow doubles your stopping distance at the very least. Number two, no sudden movements. And if you are going to make a sudden move or crank the wheel, you better already have your counter steering in mind before you make it, or certain disaster could be looming in the not too distant future. This kind of brings me to the side subject of this video. How and why the FISA investigation, or the investigation into the ties between Russia and Donald Trump, would have or could have gotten started in the first place. First of all, the Obama administration, they knew they were in deep shit once they figured out that their candidate, Hillary Clinton, wasn't going to be the one who was going to be elected to be president. So that being said, they had to figure out how to game the system. And let's not forget, the tentacles of the deep state run throughout the world. That's all part of the New World Order system, and strikes to the heart of what globalism really is. It isn't just one entity or agency, it's an interconnected system that's quite literally worldwide. So in order to defer blame from themselves, or have plausible deniability for getting the investigation off the ground in the first place, the information had to come from an outside entity or agency. So they put feelers out to all their world partners in the United Kingdom, in the Ukraine, and even Australia, which, by the way, happen to be the very people who put forth the information, supposedly, to get this whole Russia investigation started in the first place. Which, by the way, was based on second-hand, third-hand information of supposedly stuff that was said during a conversation in a bar somewhere in Australia. Number one, that is not an appropriate reason to start an investigation, but they were desperate. Because even after fixing the Democratic primary so that Hillary Clinton would be favored to win or win it, as opposed to Bernie Sanders, who probably would have been the one to do so if the fix wasn't in. But Bernie wasn't one of theirs, or at least they didn't have confidence in him to pull off what they were attempting to do. But I kind of slipped off subject there a little bit. It all comes down to, ooh, it's icy out here, something the intelligence agencies said, or Chuck Schumer said about the intelligence agencies. If you go against the intelligence agencies, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. And it just so happens, these very same intelligence agencies are the ones who confirmed that Russia hacked the DNC. Not true. The DNC hack was an inside job, proven behind the scenes by the download speed at which the files were taken out of the DNC server. But they had to find somehow or some way to have linkage between Russia and what they were trying to do with the Trump campaign. Yeah, I know this all sounds pretty damn complicated, but try and stay with me. Once they realized that there were holes in what they were trying to do, that's when the process had to be subverted even more. That's why when the CIA sent a letter to the FBI saying that Carter Page was one of their assets, that information had to be changed, because that blows their narrative that they're trying to create right out of the water. So they falsified documents and quite literally changed evidence to suit their narrative that Donald Trump was in collusion with the Russians. Something at this point we all know not to be true. Alright, I forgot where I was, but it really doesn't matter. There are those who would have us believe that the FBI started all of this on their own. Not true. They were acting under orders from the Obama White House. How do I know this? 2 things. Obama himself said during a speech before the election, don't worry about Mr. Trump. We have our eye on him. Well, what the hell would that mean other than the fact that he knew that the Trump campaign was under surveillance? Number 2, there were text messages between 2 of the FBI agents involved. One saying in particular that POTUS wants to know everything we're doing. POTUS being the president. So the White House knew damn well what was going on. As a matter of fact, in my opinion, they were quarterbacking the whole thing. Now, when their narrative started falling apart, they had to come up with something else. Enter Robert Mueller and the special counsel investigation. Chock full of people who were sympathetic to the Democrats and donors to the Hillary Clinton campaign and lifelong members of the Democratic Party in what, mind you, was supposed to be a bipartisan investigation where both sides were represented so that it could be conducted fairly. And they picked away at whatever they could, and when they realized that they weren't going to be able to nail down the president on anything, they started going after people who were associated with him for things that had nothing to do with Russian collusion. All for optics. So the things looked like something might be going on, when the reality of it is there's nothing going on, and they had no evidence, even though they stacked the investigation with their own people who were in a position to be able to twist things however they might choose to. And there was so little there that they couldn't even do that. And that's why the Mueller report and his testimony in front of Congress went the way that it did. At that point, they ran out of options. That is until the subject of the Ukraine came up. It's starting to look like that they were taken by surprise when the subject of the Bidens and Ukraine came up. And they had to come up with something to divert the American public's attention from what was really going on. Because the Ukraine has been known for a hotbed of corruption ever since, for as long as I can remember. And where there's corruption, you will find the deep state. It's just the way that it is. Because for the most part, an authoritarian system lends towards corruption, and people who are looking to or willing to enrich themselves. And we all know how that's done. We all know the mentality of people like that. So I shouldn't have to get into the fact that people like that are willing to use people however they can, whenever they can, to enrich themselves or gain power for themselves along the way. The Biden-Ukraine connection is merely the tip of the iceberg, and Pelosi knows it. That's why as soon as that came up, all of a sudden they're trying to impeach Trump over a bunch of bullshit, subverting the process and the rules along the way in order to have the outcome that they want. And here's the rub. And the joke will be on the Democrats in the end, or at least that's what I hope. Because Trump wants a trial in order to be able to expose all of this. That way the Democrats can't claim election interference and political persecution because they're the ones that started the whole damn thing. And if it doesn't go that way, we're screwed. Because the means to subvert the election by the deep state and the Democrats are already in place. That's what the push for social media censorship is all about. Deplatforming and banning Republicans from social media platforms and so forth and so on. They think they got this all sewed up. But a huge part of it is impeaching Trump and getting him out of office. It doesn't do them any good just to impeach or censure him, because he'll still be there and still have the ability to expose all of this one way or another. And in the end, that's what drives it all. It's not that they don't like Donald Trump, which, by the way, they don't. They're scared of his ass because he can expose the whole thing. And when and if it all starts to come unglued, they're going to start falling like dominoes. Because as the song says, one thing leads to another.